When we think of 1941, we think of the smoking ruins of Pearl Harbor or the freezing hell of the Eastern Front. But there is a chapter of World War II so controversial, so strategically vital, and so morally gray that it has been largely scrubbed from Western textbooks. In August 1941, two of the world's greatest powers, Great Britain and the Soviet Union, launched a massive, unprovoked, double invasion of a neutral nation, the Imperial State of Iran. Iran hadn't fired a shot. They had declared themselves neutral, but they sat on two things the Allies couldn't live without: oil and geography. To the British, Iran was the gas station of the empire. To the Soviets, it was the back door to survival. This is the forensic investigation into Operation Countenance, the day the Allies became the aggressors, the fall of the Pahlavi Dynasty, and the secret Persian Corridor that truly won the war. By the summer of 1941, the world was on fire. Hitler had launched Operation Barbarossa, and the Soviet Union was hemorrhaging territory. Stalin was desperate for supplies, but the Arctic convoys to Murmansk were being decimated by U-boats. The Allies needed a new way in. The Shah's Dilemma. Reza Shah Pahlavi, the ruler of Iran, was a man trying to drag his country into the 20th century. He had hired thousands of German engineers, technicians, and doctors to build Iran's infrastructure. To the Shah, these were just experts. To London and Moscow, these were a Nazi fifth column, waiting to sabotage the oil fields. The British issued an ultimatum: expel the Germans or face the consequences. The Shah, asserting his nation's sovereignty, refused. He believed that international law and his declaration of neutrality would protect him. He was wrong. In the world of 1941, neutrality was a luxury that oil-rich nations couldn't afford. Without a formal declaration of war, the invasion began at dawn. It was a pincer movement of terrifying proportions. The British strike the South. From the Persian Gulf, the British Royal Navy and Indian Army divisions launched an amphibious assault on Abadan, home to the world's largest oil refinery. The Iranian Navy, small and outgunned, was destroyed in minutes. The pride of the Iranian fleet, the Babur and Palang, were sunk at their moorings. The British didn't want to destroy the refinery. They wanted to protect it for their own tanks and planes. The Soviet hammer, the North. Simultaneously, the Red Army crossed the northern border with three massive armies, including armored divisions and air support. The Soviets didn't bother with diplomacy. They bombed Iranian cities, including Tabriz and Rasht, to spread terror. The Iranian army, though brave, was equipped with WWII-era rifles and had no tanks that could match the Soviet T-26s. It wasn't a battle. It was a police action with heavy artillery. Why did the Allies risk international condemnation to invade a neutral country? It wasn't just about the Germans. It was about Lend-Lease, the lifeline to Stalin. The Soviets were on the verge of collapse. The Persian Corridor, a railway running from the Persian Gulf to the Caspian Sea, was the only safe way to get American trucks, planes, and food to the Red Army. The logistics of conquest. The Trans-Iranian Railway, a miracle of engineering that the Allies immediately seized and expanded. The bridge to victory. Over 5 million tons of supplies passed through Iran. Without this corridor, many historians believe the Soviet Union would have fallen in 1942. The oil factor. The Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, now BP, provided the fuel for the entire British Mediterranean fleet. To the Allies, the sovereignty of 15 million Iranians was a small price to pay for the lifeline that kept the war effort alive. Reza Shah Pahlavi was devastated. He realized his army had collapsed in less than 80 hours. His own generals were defecting or being assassinated. On September 16, 1941, as Soviet and British troops converged on Tehran, the Shah was forced to abdicate. With the rise of the sun, the British and Soviets allowed his young son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, to take the throne, but he was a puppet king. He had to sign a tripartite treaty that officially handed over control of Iran's communication and transport lines to the Allies. The once proud Persian Empire was now a supply depot for foreign powers. Educational insight. This invasion planted the seeds of the 1979 Islamic Revolution. The Iranian people never forgot the humiliation of 1941, the day the liberators of the world became their occupiers. While the Allies celebrated the success of the Persian Corridor, the Iranian people suffered. The invasion triggered a massive economic collapse. The Great Hunger of 1942. The Allies seized the majority of Iran's grain and trucks to feed their soldiers and transport supplies to Russia, so the result was a devastating famine. Inflation skyrocketed by 450%. Bread riots broke out in Tehran, and the Allied troops, the same men fighting for freedom in Europe, were ordered to suppress the Iranian protesters. To the average Iranian, there was no difference between a Nazi occupation and an Allied protection. Many historians argue that the Cold War actually started in Iran in 1945. When the war ended, the British left as promised. The Soviets refused to move. The Azerbaijan crisis Stalin tried to set up puppet republics in northern Iran. This led to the first major standoff at the newly formed United Nations. It was the first time the U.S. had to use diplomatic nuclear pressure to force the Red Army to withdraw from a country they had invaded during the war. But Iran was the testing ground for the containment strategy that would define the next 40 years. The Anglo-Soviet invasion of Iran is a reminder that in total war, neutrality is an illusion. Strategic necessity versus morality. The Allies needed Iran to win, proving that even the good guys will break international law if the stakes are high enough. The logistics of victory. The war wasn't just won by soldiers, it was won by the Trans-Iranian Railway and the Abadan refinery. Long-term consequences. You cannot occupy a nation and expect them to forget it. The resentment from this invasion shaped Middle Eastern politics for the rest of the century,